First of all, there is no official source confirming whose hand this really is. So when I say it might be Goku's, or when people say it belongs to Android 17, it's still all just theory. Honestly, that hand might not belong to either of them. First, let's do a visual analysis and rule out some possibilities. You can tell the hand looks more masculine, so we can already rule out Android 18. Another thing, it probably isn't Dr. Gero's hand either, because you probably remember that both he and Android 19 had an energy absorption device in the center of their hands. On top of that, Android 19's hand is white, while Dr. Gero's hand looks older and wrinkled. So maybe it's Android 16's hand? Well, it could be, but we also have to remember that Android 16's hand could detach and transform into an energy cannon. Because of that, I personally don't think it's his either. Now, I know that in Dragon Ball Super Superhero, the movie opening actually uses Dr. Gero's hand for a very similar animation to the one we see in Dragon Ball Z. But in that case, it's obvious that is Dr. Gero's hand because of the absorption device, the wrinkles, and the fact that he literally appears in the scene. But in the Dragon Ball Z opening, nothing really points directly to Dr. Gero. So then, why do so many fans believe it's Android 17? Well, this opening first appeared in episode 118, which marks the beginning of the Android saga. In other words, the hand, especially with those cable-like details around it, seems to symbolize the androids. And honestly, that idea makes a lot of sense. But whenever I look at this hand, I just can't fully picture Android 17 as the owner. First, even though it clearly looks masculine, Android 17's hands were never this large. Another detail that stands out to me is the fact that this hand fires blue-colored energy that almost looks like a Kamehameha. But in Dragon Ball Z, Android 17's attacks usually had a yellow color. I honestly can't remember him using blue energy until Dragon Ball Super. And there's something else. Remember when Goku was learning the Spirit Bomb from King Kai? Take a look at the shape of Goku's hand during that time. Now compare it to the hand from the opening. The shape is actually very similar. I'm not saying they're identical, but it really feels like the opening animation may have been inspired by Goku's hand. But then we run into another problem. If this is supposed to be Goku's hand, why don't we see his blue wristband? And why are there mechanical looking cables around it? Goku isn't an android, so representing him that way wouldn't make much sense, right? And if it's Android 17's hand, then why don't we see the sleeve of his white long sleeve shirt? Remember, his shirt normally covers his wrists. You could argue that maybe he rolled up his sleeve like he did during his fight with Piccolo. But still, there are just too many unanswered questions about this mysterious hand. Could it be Android 17's hand? Sure. Could it be Goku's? Also possible, but it could just as easily be a random hand created specifically for this animation. Here's another interesting detail. This hand appears in the second Dragon Ball Z opening, the same one where we also see Dr. Gero's face. Because of that, many fans assume the hand belongs to him. But like I already explained, the details don't really match. Now here's where things get really interesting. This version of the opening first aired on November 27th, 1991 in episode 1 and 18. Meanwhile, Android 17 and Android 18 had only appeared in the manga 15 days earlier on November 12th, 1991. Back then, the anime and manga were being produced extremely close together. And we also have to remember that the Android saga went through a ton of changes behind the scenes. At first, the main villains were only supposed to be Androids 19 and 20. Then the story changed to Androids 17 and 18. And eventually, Cell was introduced. In other words, nothing was fully planned yet. So creating an opening animation specifically based on Android 17 only 15 days after his manga debut feels very unlikely to me. Honestly, I doubt the staff sat down and said, let's make this specifically Android 17's hand, when the character had barely even appeared in the manga at that point. And there's more. You know Dr. Gero's face that appears in the opening? That was added more than 3 months after his manga debut. To be exact, Dr. Gero first appeared in the manga on August 13th, 1991, while the updated opening aired on November 27th of the same year. That gave the animation team enough time to create scenes based on him, especially considering that animation production back then was much slower than it is today. So what do I personally think happened here? I believe the animators simply created a generic hand meant to represent the androids as a concept, rather than any specific character. Because if it were truly Goku's hand or Android 17's hand, there would probably be at least some clear identifying detail, but there really isn't. It just feels like a symbolic, artificial being hand connected to the android saga overall. Remember when future Trunks first warned Goku about the androids? During that scene, we even see a flashback of a fully mechanical looking creature that ended up looking nothing like the androids we eventually got later. That happened because the designs still weren't finalized yet. The manga story was literally still being developed in real time. So yes, connecting this mysterious hand to Android 17 does make sense. But personally, I still don't think it was meant to be him specifically. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think about this mystery? Do you agree with this theory? Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments. And once again, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.